Welcome to the Poisoning Podcast. I'm your host, Erin DeLulo. If you enjoy this show, please rate, review, and share it with a friend. Today's guest, Carole, has a burden. She lost her son to fentanyl poisoning, but she's been able to take that grief and turn it into activism to save other people in this devastating epidemic. A former guest of the show, Ed Bish, introduced me to Carole, and she has an article in Psychology Today about a burdened generation. We've been in this epidemic for almost 25 years, losing a million people, and the psychological and mental health tolls it's taken. Everyone, please welcome Carole Trottere to the show. So great to have you join us today, Carole.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I would love for you to start with your piece in Psychology Today, because I think it is it's such an important issue, but it's not getting the attention it deserves in part of this crisis and epidemic.
You're inside my head saying that. That's exactly why I chose to write about it, because I feel like this country has been, it only compares to the AIDS epidemic. We're in the throes of an epidemic with hundreds of thousands of people dying. And really, I feel like there's not much attention on the people who are left. I call us the walking wounded. We're a legion. And I especially like to pay attention to, for instance, my son's best friend. My son died of a fentanyl poisoning in 2018. I've been very close to one of his best friends, and he's been struggling with addiction. But I reflect on the fact that he knows like 30 people who have died, including his best friend, my son. How are they dealing with this, and are they dealing with it? And is anyone thinking about it? Is anyone reaching out to them? So I really think, obviously, I'm grieving the loss of my son. I know a lot of people who are also grieving losses, but a lot of these people are young people. They're in their 20s and 30s. I like to think back when I was that age. How many people did you know who had died at that age? Maybe, one from high school in a car accident. Maybe you knew one person. Maybe your grandma had died. These are overwhelming statistics of how many people these young people have lost.
No, you're right. It's the biggest killer of 18 to 40-year-olds.
Right.
So their peers are dying. And how do you process that? And what support are you getting? So I can't even begin to imagine, I say this in my opening, losing a child, right? I'm a mother. One of the reasons behind this project is I am a mother of teens and tweens now. How are we handling this as a country? Because this is a unique epidemic to America. Not really in any other country are they feeling what we feel, because we have this just demand for illicit drugs here. And what solutions are you seeing to this, Carole?
I think that education to the medical profession and mental health professions is critical. And I think what happens, because for the article, I spoke to a social worker who is, she runs, it's called What's Your Grief? It's an online resource for people of any kind of grieving. And she said that the issue is often, let's say you are still using, you've lost a lot of friends, but you're still using. You go to a doctor and you say, I'm very depressed. I've lost so many friends. They're going to kind of move the conversation into, well, you need to get into recovery and you need to stop using drugs, as opposed to attending to their grief. So that's one thing I think the medical profession needs to be aware of, ask the questions of young people. If they mention, I lost a friend last month from a fentanyl overdose. reach out to them and give them some resources. There, I live on Long Island, and we have my friends and I, who are all grieving moms and grieving grandparents. We started a grief support group for anybody. It's free. It's only once a month right now, but it's free. Anybody can access it. So we people need to be talking about it first of all. Obviously, not telling you anything you don't know. There's a terrible stigma, which is part of the problem with this opioid epidemic and the fentanyl. There's a stigma. I talk to people all the time that still think, well, what did you expect that was going to happen? You're using drugs, and there's a stigma that with the old vision of a drug addict laying in an alley somewhere shooting up, not the image that's today, where it's could be a young high school captain of the football team took half a Percocet at a party and ended up dying. So I think the general public still hasn't caught up with really what the reality is of this epidemic.
There's even stigma I've heard from doctors who've chosen to work in addiction medicine. Stigma from other doctors saying, why would you choose that? Like it's some lowly position. So I think the stigma runs rampant. We need to make a change on that. And education is very key, because the victims of this epidemic it's like tearing the pages out of a yearbook,
Oh,
is what
yes.
one of our guests said. And we live in a culture where drugs are seen as fine. At least some are legalized, and they're putting them on the ballot. And so what do you think young people are going to think
What's
when
the
we do
message?
that?
Right. Well, this country consumes 80% of all pharmaceuticals in the whole entire world. We're only one of two countries that allow advertising of pharmaceuticals. I don't know if
Right.
you ever watch 60 Minutes, every single
Sure.
commercial is for a drug. I also
I
think,
think that
though,
might tell you the age of their viewership. I don't
but
think they're 18-year-olds.
no, but you know what? What about young kids in elementary school who are all put on attention deficit medicine the minute, especially little boys can't pay attention? Hey, that's the way little boys are wired. And so that starts a cycle. In fact, my son's best friend refers to that he says he was put on, attention deficit medicine very young. And by the time you hit high school, you're searching for, oh, what's the next buzz I can get? What's the next experience with a drug? People get depressed. The first thing your doctor suggests is to put you on something. Not that there's always a place for that kind of, medication, but you can't always solve physical pain, mental pain with a pill. Sometimes, there's other options to work through those things. When I lost my son, I mean, you're beyond depressed. You're just devastated. And I know my doctor kept urging me to go on antidepressant, and I just said, you know what? Why mask it? This is what I'm going to have to go through. I didn't
It's the
feel
human experience.
I didn't want to numb it. Why am I going to
Right.
numb it? And then next thing, that's exactly how young people get into using drugs. I get it. It's hard to be a teenager. Life is very challenging. And, this country, we need to take a few steps back, right? We need to stop the fentanyl from getting here and getting in the hands of people. But the old metaphor of someone's falling into the river and we're pulling them out of the river and trying to save them, pulling them out of the river. But why are they jumping in? Why are they falling into the river to begin with? We have to go further upstream and I think we are starting to address that now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's I'm friends with someone that is really active with the co-occurring, issues that people have, co-occurring mental issues, which often leads to drug use. We really have to start putting the spotlight on that as well. Mental health is also something that's always had a bit of a stigma to it.
Oh, very true. I mean, I have older relatives who would be like, therapy or talking, going to group counseling. Oh no, like that means
Right.
there's something
So,
wrong with you,
right. So it's
or
almost like you have a double stigma. My son suffered from depression.
hmm,
He also had attention issues at times, but right, mental health issues, stigma, then drug use, another stigma. It's like you're probably often people like that feel I can't even admit that I have all these issues going on and I'm, embarrassed or humiliated to talk about it.
and we have close to 1 million dead from this crisis, and that's 1 million plus family members and
Um,
friends affected by it as well. It's just not the person who died.
I always refer to it as it's like a spider web of grief. When you look at the statistics of how many people died, right, from overdose, opioids, fentanyl, it's a spider web of other family members that are affected and siblings, and their whole life changes in an instant. And I think we also we need to be more sensitive to there is a collective grief in this country.
Hmm.
Maybe some people are totally unaware of it. They haven't read a newspaper or they've been living in a cave. I don't know. But the collective grief of not just the parents, the siblings, the husbands, wives, but the friends, the young people, that breaks my heart to think that they have this burden at such a young time in their life when they should be as carefree as possible, and they have this huge burden they're carrying, and that's not going to go away. That's with them for the rest of their life to think back. When I was in my 20s, I knew 15 people that died of fentanyl poisoning.
Yeah. It's You're right, it's the burden of a generation, and we're going to be seeing how this plays out for years to come. And
It,
while
you
the Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say it's so similar to the AIDS epidemic,
Yeah.
and think they were stigmatized also, the gay population. I look back on that now, how that was handled, and there's so many similarities. How, the opioid epidemic has been with us for 20 years already, the fentanyl
Yeah.
for 10. And you just see how slow everybody was in realizing, uh-oh, this is really something horrible that's happening. This is like a war. This is this is a crisis, an epidemic. And look how quickly we reacted to COVID. If only we had had a fraction of that urgency with this epidemic. I still feel when I hear something positive happening, like, oh, they finally are slowing down the precursors coming from China. Like, yeah, but it's been happening for 10 years. And now it's very frustrating to think of how long it takes for society and the government to catch up.
They There's so much that just happened before the Christmas, New Year's holidays. So there is a bipartisan committee
Yes.
on China in the House, and they released their fentanyl working group report, which I haven't even fully been able to get through. And good. Let's crack down on China. They're putting all these chemicals into our country and basically knowingly,
Hmm.
and I even think the Communist Party is funding some of it.
They are. They actually proved that last year in one of the committees.
So, but what is missing from this is the committee on helping people heal and
Mm,
educating people from not young people the dangers of this drug and or these drugs. And now we have carfentanil
mm,
coming up, and it's 1,000 times stronger than morphine. And what was it? 1,000, maybe like 500 times stronger than normal fentanyl. So the bad guys are always going to be
right.
trying to outmaneuver anything we do.
Reinventing, and they're doing it now. Xylazine, which is an
Yeah.
animal tranquilizer, and then I was just reading about another one the other day. I could never pronounce it, but that is now showing up in autopsies. Now, the problem with these is they don't respond to Narcan. So,
Okay.
they're constantly changing and mixing the recipes. It's like it's so hard to keep ahead of things. What are we going to do if these start to become the prominent drugs, and we have no antidote to that? I mean, right now, overdoses are coming down slightly.
Yes.
I don't get too excited about that. I mean, I'm really happy to hear it because I feel like, first of all, no one can definitively say why. I mean, there's lots of theories. Is it the Narcan use? But is drug use going down? That's the question I don't think anyone can answer, and I don't know if that's true, if
There's,
that's going
from what
down.
I've read, there's, and I don't know how honest people are in surveys. Like when you're
I
surveying
yeah,
someone
you're right
about their
about
drug
that.
use, maybe they're extremely honest. I don't know. Um, but seems to be a downtick among young people in admitting drug usage. So, and that's sort of cyclical. You've seen that with cocaine and other drugs over the decades. They've seen an older family member or friend be affected by it, and they go,
Hmm.
well, maybe that's not for me. Um, Also, what I like about you, Carol, and this piece and what drew me to you is you're a normal citizen, everyday lay person, and you are trying to make a difference. And that's a huge part in fighting fentanyl poisoning. There was a study released in that it was an uptick of 44% of a normal citizen or person administering Narcan to someone before they called EMS in 2023. That has to be helping.
Right, that's a wonderful statistic
44%.
to
And that was
hear.
in JAMA. That was in the JAMA journal. And it was reported, they call 911. They said we gave naloxone,
Uh-huh.
Narcan.
No,
So it's,
that makes me smile to hear that because I do work with our local police force here, the Suffolk County Police. I don't actually do the trainings,
okay.
but what I did is I started a kind of a new program with them where it started actually. I wanted to do something to mark my son's birthday a couple years ago.
Mm.
So I went to his favorite pizza place and I said, I want to give out, I'm going to pay them, give out free pizza to anybody who comes here and gets trained on Narcan. And the Suffolk County Police came. They just set up in a booth at a pizza place. And that first time, and they were like, we've never done this before. We don't know how this is going to work, but we trained like 65 people that day, got Narcan and free pizza. So that kind of was a jumping
So
off
great.
idea where instead of doing they usually do Narcan trainings, you do it at a library and, two or three people were showing up. And it was like, how do you get people out? And I always say, look, if I was working, I don't want to go out at night and sit for 2 hours and listen to a lecture. But if you
Yeah, something
stopped me at,
bureaucratic. You
right,
gotta, yeah, have to
if you
make it
stop if you stopped me at a farmer's market and said, look, in 2 minutes, I'm going to explain to you how to use this. So that's what we did. We went to farmers markets
wonderful.
and I would, next to the police, I had something called the Purple Rock Project where I have these rocks that I collect from my beach. I paint them purple and people can come and write the name of someone who's passed of an overdose. And you'd be amazed. You think, oh, how many people at a farmer's market? A dozen, that just people walking around. And
Yeah.
it would be like a mini counseling session. I mean, we'd be hugging and crying together, and I would take the rock and I put it in a memorial park that we have here on Long Island for victims of overdose. So the thing with the Narcan training with the police, they loved it. Like the first day at the farmers market, we trained nearly 100 people. Then we went during the summer, this past summer, we went to several outdoor festivals that they have around here where they close the whole main street down.
Mm-hmm.
One night we trained nearly 1,000, gave out nearly 1,000 doses of Narcan. We ran out. They had to run back to the police department and get more. That's that. So when you tell me that average people are administering Narcan, I love to hear that because we always say it should be like a box of Band-Aids in your house. Everyone should have it. I feel we did a great job educating people as to what it is, and you still meet people that say, "Oh, I don't need that. My kids are good. I don't need that." And so it's an opportunity for me to educate them. Um, just standing there and it really, you take 2 or 3 minutes of their time. So I think, yes, the Narcan's definitely made an indent, but the change in the drugs that we're seeing now is very frightening.
Yes, it's always keeping one step ahead.
Yes, and it's really, it's just, there. I don't know if you read recently in the Times, I think it was on last Sunday, that the cartels are now reformulating some of their mixing the drugs, the counterfeit pills. They're trying to get rid of the people that are just doing a sloppy job of it, and where some pills have enough fentanyl to kill you, the next one might not. And so what they're doing is they're approaching homeless people, offering them $30 to be injected with their new solution. And some of the people are dying. But I don't know. These are just such evil people where, money is everything. How much money do you need? I don't know. But, lives are meaningless to them.
No, they're even trying. So right now, for our listeners, the precursors for fentanyl come from China. So even the cartels in Mexico have to get it from China. And
Right.
sometimes it comes to America first and
Yes.
then sent
I just was reading an
to
article
Mexico.
today. That's
So,
right.
which I had a whole nother episode on with a Reuters reporter who did a
Oh,
great
I was just
investigation.
reading that article. It was excellent.
Yeah, they're doing the Reuters, the Mexico City Bureau is doing great work on this issue. And, but now they're hiring chemistry
Yeah.
students
Uh-huh.
who don't, Mexico's economy is not the American economy, uh, to work for more money they could ever make in a
Right.
normal job in Mexico to try to create their own precursors and to create a stronger version of fentanyl because it's so addictive.
It's frightening to think that that's what people, that country is basing their economy on. And I know they when they do get a statement from someone from Mexico, they basically say, well, as long as America has an appetite for it, we're going to sell it. And it's a very complicated issue, but it's just very sad to think that that's maybe, I don't know, we'd be better off sending money to Mexico to improve their economy or create some jobs there where people, and I can imagine you need to feed your family and someone says, if you press pills all day here and the money they can offer to people, whether it's at
Right.
the border, post office, wherever that stuff is coming in, on a plane, a truck, um, it's hard to compete with that if you're off give someone $10,000 to drive a truck over the border.
Or even the border from Canada. Plenty of
Right.
super labs there too. So it's so complicated. Now you have a news article hanging behind you called Millions Unspent on LI, which I assume is Long Island. Can you
Yes,
tell
Long
us a little bit
Island.
about that, please?
Well, Long Island, I'll just check. We have $213.5 million dollars in opioid settlement money still available. And
Mm,
the money hasn't been used quickly. A very little of it has been used. So, I like to make a little noise on that because
good.
talking about, I mean, that's a phenomenal amount of money. What good could have been done with it the past couple years? And it's been sitting there. One county has been a little more egregious than Suffolk County has been pretty good with giving it out. But there's so much money left, and I just think, my gosh, what good could have been done? Hire more social workers, counselors, pay people a little more, education programs. So many things could be done, and it just breaks my heart that there's really the opioid settlement money is kind of loosey goosey with who has to report what, and every state is doing it a little differently. People have to really be on top of their counties and their states about how fast is that money being used, who's getting it, what kind of programs is it supporting. It shouldn't just be the grieving parents that are interested in what's
Right.
happening to it. I want to see, I mean, I think what you're doing is fantastic because you have children, and why are not more parents, maybe they haven't had a loss yet, they should be interested in what's going on with this opioid settlement money. So I don't know how you get people fired up and interested in that, but it's a shame to see. That's our blood money. We call that our blood money, the parents. I would just like to see it used. Counselors, they need to be paid more too. I mean, social workers and counselors who do God's work. I always say they should be paid what a professional baseball player makes, the things that they do, and what they do to make the world a better place is irreplaceable.
It's what we value in society. It says something.
It certainly does.
Well, you won't be surprised probably when I tell you I will be having a KFF reporter on the show this month. They just did a huge report on all 50 states and where some of the settlement dollars are going. So we're going to have that
That's great.
reporter on to dive into those details. But it is very key that that money gets out. It's prevention, education, recovery.
Yes. And, I don't think often that parents or, families that have been directly affected are often consulted. I think any county or state that's giving away the money should have plenty of people who had skin in the game and get our opinions on where it should go. Sometimes you don't always want to see it go to um, the traditional recovery places that do recovery in a certain way. Let's expand how we look at recovery. We
Yeah.
need to be thinking more out of the box, a little more creative. We have a place on Long Island called Hope House Ministries. They take in people, it's free. It's and they stay for like a year. That's what a
Um,
recovery place needs to be. So I would love to see more of that kind of model be given. Hey, 213 million, give them a couple million and expand that because I think it's statistics prove, right? 28 days, if you're lucky to get
wow.
that from your insurance company, that's like not even the first baby step to real healthy recovery. So,
I've had heroin addicts who are in recovery on the show, and one even runs I mention him a lot, a recovery center here in West Virginia where I live, and he'll tell you 28 days for opioid use disorder does not, makes a dent maybe.
right,
Your brain is rewired once you
that's
are
right.
attached to these drugs. You cannot function normally. You can't enjoy anything. That what these drugs do is it takes enjoyment out of everything until you
And
can get healed.
right, and you think that's just the physical part of it? What about emotionally, like why did you get to that place in the first place where you were using it does 28 days isn't even time to tap into that of what may have driven you to that or so I would really love to see that money used for more again out of the box longer term just because that's the way we've always done it with 28 days and again what a struggle just to get your insurance company to approve that. How's that working for you? It's not because so many people have to do that repeatedly. So I think we need to look at more long term if this country is really serious about moving forward with this issue and giving people a good life after um, the initial rehab. Like they need a long term recovery plan. I would love to see that be more the rule.
Amen. I think it cannot be cookie cutter because that has not been working.
That's right.
So tell us more about your activism. You've worked with the police department. What other
Okay. I
things?
I also work with a nonprofit called Gabriel's Giving Tree,
Okay.
and it was started by a good friend of mine who lost her grandson,
Mm.
Gabriel. And what it does is it helps people pay for burial costs and funerals because my friend Paulette said at the time that her grandson died, that was just an added stress on her family that, she would never have thought about. So we give like $3,000 towards people. We don't do financial searches on them or anything. It's like if someone comes to us and says, my child just died, I don't have money to do anything. We donate the money. We work with funeral homes, but we also do other things to help address the grief that follows the loss of someone. It's where we have a memorial park, and it's just a beautiful, passive place over on the South Shore of Long Island. And that's where we have all the purple rocks around trees with people's names on them. And last year we installed something called a wind phone. I don't know if you know what a wind phone
Mm,
is. Okay,
no.
it's an old rotary phone. You put it on a tree or something. Obviously, it's not connected to anything, but it's a comfort tool for people who are grieving. So we installed it. It was the first one on Long Island, and all the parents, you see them standing there talking to their loved one. It's just something to acknowledge your grief in any kind of way to find comfort. So we've done that, and we also have social events for people who have lost. If it's Christmas parties, sometimes we do something in the summer just to bring people together when you're grieving the loss of somebody, especially from a drug-related death. You're not always comfortable talking to everybody about it, and to be with other people that just totally get you is really it's a lifesaver. I have a great group of parents. You never have to explain why you bust out crying. Like what you
Mm,
just don't have to you don't have to explain yourself so much because they understand. Um, we also started the grief support group because we felt the need. So we started that this year, and we sort of we have a counselor, a licensed counselor that runs it, but one of us usually will attend just to, you know, talk to the parents because we have their experience. Um, I also like to meet with as many elected officials that represent my area as
smart.
possible because I just beg them, just talk about the issue. Regardless of whether, Republican, Democrat, I just ask you to please talk about it to help remove the stigma and help educate. Talk about Narcan. And, I don't like to get too politicized with the issue. I don't want to just say, oh, it's the border, the border. Yeah. Because you just mentioned about where all the different places the fentanyl's coming from and the precursors. So I like to meet with my all my legislators. I like to meet with my senators. I have Senator Gillibrand, Senator Schumer, meet with them and just ask them to please, and inform me what's going on. What are you working on? And I feel like you have to be a noisy pain in the neck with elected officials. I
Really?
used I used
No.
I used to work in government, so I
Yeah.
I was a communications director for many elected officials. So I know, the squeaky wheel. You have to go to meetings and hold up a sign, and I'm okay doing that. I want to be in their face and not to forget this issue. It was I found it very frustrating last year. I just felt like nobody was talking about it enough. The number one cause of death in this country, how could it not be in the paper every day? How could people not be talking about it more? I'm sure you feel the same
You
frustration.
do.
And I think that's related to the stigma. I even urged my local newspaper, why don't you? They used to put the stats in for COVID deaths every day. And I've asked them several times, why can't you do that for overdoses? Let people know. 3 people died this weekend in your town. It helps educate people and create awareness.
That's a great point that I've never thought of.
But,
That's what
they,
we
they
should have
don't.
every
It's
activist be doing in every
right.
area. Yeah.
And last year we also, I don't know if you're familiar with, it's an organization called Truth Farm. They're stationed in Binghamton, and they do this thing called the Trail of Truth. we usually do it in Washington, where they have tombstones with your child's face on it.
Mm.
And it's sort of like an art installation and a protest. We went to Washington in 2023, but this year we did a local one on Long Island, where we went to the beach. We had probably 100 tombstones of local Long Island people who had died. I mean, that's just a fraction of how many people have died in my home here. And, it was a conversation piece for people walking by. And again, it was spread out on the sand. It was a reason for all of us grieving parents to come together. But we also got to talk and educate so many people that walk by. Oh, what is this? Oh my gosh, all those faces. It's nothing like a personal story, a personal face to drive the point home that, this is a big issue right now.
Thank you for this work you're doing. So I ask everyone who comes on the show, where do they keep their naloxone or Narcan? So where
Well,
do
I
you keep
keep it in my purse because you're really not supposed to keep it in your car
Same.
for
Same.
temperature reasons. So I keep it in my purse, and anytime if there's someone I need to give it to, I have the giant bag upstairs in my house to replenish. For Christmas this year, I actually brought a bag to a holiday party because I knew there was some young parents there that, had teens. And I thought, oh, they're going to know what it is, but no, not necessarily. I explained what it is, how to use it. So there's, a few more people. I always kid it's a great stocking stuffer.
It's an amazing stocking stuffer or any holiday gift.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Carole, where can people contact you? Or is it LinkedIn? Do you have how would you like people to
Um,
contact you?
I have a Facebook page for my Purple Rock project. It's called Purple Rock Project. And my email is catrottere@gmail.com. Also, I'm connected kind of to other Facebook pages for Gabriel's Giving Tree that I discussed. And those are, I'm on LinkedIn, but
Not
through
as
my
much.
email address, or yeah, you can message me.
Well, I'll include that information in our Substack as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you for coming on the show, Carole.
Thank you so much. Really, it's wonderful that you do this, and it's just very impressive that you're sort of trying to make a better world for your kids, a better, safer world. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. That was our show. Please like, rate, review, and share this episode. Until next time.